Good afternoon, everyone. This is Gatwiri Muthara, Membership and Communications Manager for COMTO National. We're going to give it a few seconds to allow a few more attendees to drop in, and we'll start shortly. Thank you. Okay, we're going to allow a few more attendees to drop in, but in the meantime, we're going to start the webinar. Once again, this is Gatwiri Muthara, Membership and Communications Manager for COMTO National. I'd like to welcome you to our Women's History Month program, Women Leaders in Transportation, Breaking Barriers and Making Lasting Change. COMTO is also celebrating our 50 years of moving the nation and expanding opportunities for minorities in transportation. Before we begin, I'd like to thank our industry partners for their support of COMTO throughout the year. They are AECOM, H&TB, Jacobs, and WSP. I'd also like to thank our event sponsor who helped make today's event happen. That is Procel Mobility. Procel Mobility is a full-service provider of on-demand, microtransit, paratransit, medical, and shuttle services. Inspired by innovation, passion, and creativity to provide unconventional solutions customized for each customer, Procel Mobility provides freedom and access and opportunity for all. I have a few webinar housekeeping items to review. If you're experiencing any technical difficulties, please send a chat message to the host. To submit questions for the Q&A portion of the call, please use the Q&A box. Questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. This call is being recorded and will be made available to all attendees. And once again, thank you for joining us. Next, to provide a few opening remarks, we have Tara McDaniel, our interim president and CEO of COMTO National. Tara?
Thank you, Gatwiri, and hello, everyone. On behalf of COMTO National, I want to welcome you to our Women's History Month webinar. And today we are going to be joined by some extraordinarily talented women leaders, women who are leading the industry and moving the nation. Our moderator for today is Ms. Carmen Garcia. Carmen is the CEO of ABRAC Consulting, longtime COMTO member and COMTO board member. So sit back, enjoy, take lots of notes, and I'll turn it over to Carmen.
Thank you, Tara, and welcome everyone. What a program do we have in store for you today? I am truly honored to be moderating this distinguished panel of women transportation leaders as we commemorate Women's History Month, and also wanted to let you know that by the way, we're celebrating a 50th anniversary. So we know that you've been listening to many of the conversations that we're having, and we look forward to many more tidbits about the anniversary. But today I want to share, before I begin with introducing our panelists, I want to share a little bit about the history of the celebration. And it's really something that I think everyone should keep in mind as we look at Women's History Month, and really how long ago did this celebration come to fruition. And if you go back to 1911, that was the first International Women's Day in March. And it started as a week-long celebration back in 1978. And then we go on to 1980, where President Jimmy Carter issued a presidential proclamation declaring the week of March as a National Women's History Week. But in 1981, the Congress passed a resolution to make it a national celebration. And then in 1987, it was actually petitioned by Congress to celebrate for an entire month. So here we are today. But I did want to include something about the Obama administration releasing a report on women in action and those indicators of social and economic well-being for showing women's status. I think that's critically important. And I would encourage you to go and take a look at that report and see where we are then and where we are today. Thank you so much, Gatwiri. At this time, I'd like to go ahead and introduce our speakers to you. We have an amazing panel. And so it is fitting that we celebrate the value and the importance of Women's History Month as we hear from these women leaders paving the way in the transportation industry. Now, it is my pleasure to briefly introduce our esteemed panelists who are making a difference in our industry. If you'd like to see their complete bio, please visit our website, and it will give you all of the many accomplishments that they have endured during their career. So welcome again. And let me start with India Birdsong. And India is the general manager and CEO of the Greater Cleveland Regional Transportation Authority. She brings nearly 15 years of experience working in positions of increasing responsibility in the public transportation industry. She currently oversees more than 2,300 employees at the largest transit system in Ohio. Congratulations, India. She's committed to transparent leadership, management accountability, and sound financial oversight, and is an active member of COMTO, providing strategic leadership to advance RTA's initiatives at a critical time for the organization. India, thank you for joining us. Our next panelist is Inez Evans. She is currently the president and CEO of Indy, located in Indianapolis, Indiana. Inez assumed her position as president and CEO in the summer of 2019. She began her transit career, get this, as a customer service call center representative back in the 90s. And look where she is today. She most recently served as a chief operating officer for the Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority, where she was responsible for leading 1,600 employees. With more than 25 years of experience, her leadership has always been focused on finding ways to build relationships and in creating a thriving environment for all those that she serves. Thank you for joining us, Inez. Next is AJ Jackson. And AJ is a general manager of Lane Transit District located in Lane County, Oregon. In her role as general manager of Lane Transit, she manages an operating capital budget of over $130 million and provides oversight of 325 transit professionals that transport 10 million passenger boardings annually. AJ's partnerships with local officials, the business community, and union leadership has earned her agency the Pillar of the Community Award. Congratulations, AJ. She is an active member of AFTA and an active member of Latinos in Transit. Welcome and thank you for joining us. Next is Debra Johnson, CEO and General Manager of the Regional Transportation District located in Denver. Deborah was selected as General Manager and CEO of RTD by the agency's Board of Directors in August of 2020. She carries top responsibility for RTD's budget, capital projects, and service delivery, which includes bus, light rail, and commuter rail operations across the Denver metro region. Quite a region there, Deborah. She joined RTD from Long Beach Transit, where she served as Deputy CEO of the Southern California Agency from May of 2014 to October of 2020. She's a proud alumni of civic leadership programs in San Francisco and Long Beach, as well as the Eno Center for Transportation Executive Development Program. Welcome, Deborah. And our next speaker and part of this panel group here today is going to be Stephanie Wiggins. She's our CEO of Metrolink, located in Los Angeles. And Stephanie assumed leadership in January of 2019 and leads a 287 employee strong commuter railroad with a budget of 793, well, I was putting that low, 793 million. A human-centered leader, Stephanie directs an agency that operates a commuter rail network of 7 lines across a 6-county, 538 route mile system. Stephanie is a founding president of the Inland Empire chapter of Women's Transportation Seminar, better known as WTS, and is a recipient of many awards, including the League of Railway Women's 2020 Woman of the Year Award and COMTO's Women Who Move the Nation in 2018. Ladies and gentlemen, our esteemed panelists today, let's give them a little applause here, a virtual applause. And again, thank you, each and every one of you, for being here today. And the topic is just so important as we look at your leadership. How do we go about breaking some of those barriers? And how are we really making a lasting change? So we have some amazing leaders here today in agencies that are from various sizes of agencies, but we're so proud of their leadership and where they're going, and look forward to hearing their comments about not just History Month, but where are we and where do we want to go and how do we go, how do we really create excitement and enthusiasm to bring more women leaders to the top? So my first question that I'll start with the conversation is, as we celebrate Women's History Month, who are some of the women who inspire you daily and why? And I'll begin with India. India?
Hi, thanks, Carmen, and good afternoon to everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. So I get the liberty of answering the first question. It's a really good one. And I would say, just to be really simple in my answer, it's the operators and the mothers and the educators, really, that we have that are pushing our backbone of society and also of transportation. It's amazing to me when I first started in transportation, how much work is involved with moving the public. I think that a lot of times we forget as an industry and as a country how essential our traffic our traffic management skill is to moving our communities and moving our cities. So if you've ever been behind the wheel, ever spent even a few minutes operating a 40 or 60 footer down the street, you'll come to realize how much actually goes into that. And how much respect I have for those operators is tremendous. They are the backbone of what we do. And we absolutely appreciate them every day. So I'd say they are really the inspiration for continuing to do the work that I do and the work that these ladies do as well.
Thank you, India. That is really important. So many times when we're out speaking to individuals, I really applaud the CEOs that say the bus operators, because we could not do without all of the operators that manage our transportation within our industry. So thank you so much for those comments. Next, we'll have Inez comment on that. Inez?
Well, thank you. How can I follow up behind India on that answer? But, I have to echo her, all of our workers here, who do this every day. I don't like driving my car, let alone get on behind a 40-foot or 60-foot bus. But I would have to add, my mom, who, took me in when I was 16 years old and raised me when she already had 5 sons and took me in and gave me that foundation of love and showed me what hard work was. When it comes to transportation, I would say Shirley Delibrio. We call her the Queen of Transit. And, she was the first woman of color that I saw leading a transit agency that allowed me to see that one day I could aspire to be that way. So she gave me that dream. Dr. Beverly Scott, who's a mentor of mine, who's my confidant that I can call on, who reminds us that we need to reach back and make sure, beside of what we're leaving behind, but who, we're leaving behind and who we can bring forward. Michelle Obama, because she gives great quotes about how we're facing challenges. And as CEOs and as women of color, we're constantly facing challenges. And so, look at those challenges, not as disadvantages, but how we can look to overcome and make them our biggest advantages. And then finally, Rosa Parks, she was one of the first stories that I ever heard about for a woman of color standing up for what she believed was an injustice. And, she just reminds us that each person must live as a model for others.
Well said, Inez. You're exactly right. And, there's so many women in the transportation industry, such as Shirley and others that you mentioned today, that continue to, provide, any information. You can call any of those, anyone there that have been there at the leadership to respond to your questions because they've been through it, so that's important. Thank you, Inez, for sharing that with us. Next would be AJ. AJ?
Carmen, it looks like AJ may be having some technical issues, so I would suggest.
Okay, we'll go on. Yes,
AJ,
Deborah.
are you there? AJ, are you there?
Okay.
I am back.
All
I
right.
had to troubleshoot my computer. I thought, my God, I'm hoping you guys are talking about the challenges women face in the workplace and that technology was one of them. Apologies. I lost it when Carmen started talking and I was
Okay.
trying to troubleshoot and
All
so
right.
I'll let Deborah go and then I'll catch up. How's that? I did hear that piece.
All right. Well, we're just to kind of bring you up to speed, we're just talking about responding to the question as we celebrate Women's History Month. who are some of the women who inspire you daily and why? So if you want to, I'll go ahead and go with Deborah and we'll come back to you, AJ.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you very kindly. And first and foremost, I want to acknowledge COMTO for bringing us all together. I'm here with some dynamic women that I know personally, and I am so pleased and honored to be in your presence. So talking about women that inspire me, it's these individuals that are amongst me right now in this virtual room. But more specifically speaking, in reference to me, I would echo what Inez said. I think back to my mother, who basically was a strong woman that instilled in my sister and I that we had a voice that needed to be heard and that we should not cower or let anyone intimidate us. And don't think for an instant that you needed a man to persevere, that if you had one, that would be fabulous. But if you didn't, that's also fabulous. And so I keep that in the back of my mind because I learned, and it's one of my teachable points of views, that closed mouths don't get fed. So growing up in a household where she encouraged me to speak, that's what I often do daily. So that is something that I carry with me because she's no longer with me. And I often reflect on what would mama think in reference to where I am now. Growing up in Fresno, California, actually, she would take us on the bus. And now I'm actually running a transit agency. So in my viewpoint, each and every day, I think about those single mothers of color that are dependent upon the men and women to get them to and fro to activity centers, to their jobs, to provide for their family. And then another aspect, considering that we're coming off of the heels of Black History Month, really and truly, I reflect on this, and it's Harriet Tubman. I mean, the first general manager of a public transportation system. I mean, truly, somebody who was looking for freedom, and in turn, that's what public transportation is all about. It is the vehicle that unlimits people from whatever plight they have in life. And it is the vehicle, pun intended, that bridges the haves and the have-nots. And I would say also, I think of Shirley Chisholm, who often said, if you don't have a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. Because when we think about her being the first Black woman elected to Congress in the early 70s and being the first presidential nominee on a national party ticket, all of those are interwoven into why I am sitting here, virtually that is, before you all today. And not to mention the great transportation leaders that we have that were touched upon by Inez. I mean, each and every one of us could reach out to, you know, the Queen of Transit and basically be able to have an ear, or Dr. Scott, or the many others. And I don't want to start naming people because inevitably I'll forget someone, but recognizing that we do have our kitchen cabinet amongst all these dynamic transportation divas. So that's what I would impart with all of you all today. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Well said. There are so many leaders, but you know, there's, you know, those of you all that are in the room or here with us today are making a difference. So thank you for your continued leadership and for your involvement with COMTO. All right, AJ, ready for you?
Well, very inspiring to hear Deborah just talk about kind of the history of how much minority women have really contributed, and even going back to Harriet Tubman. And what I want to say is kind of having now several decades in the transit industry, there was not a lot of women to look up to originally, not a lot of women that we could look around and see. I remember the early days of APTA, we did not see a lot of women, but I will say that it's been inspiring for me to continue to see more and more women leading. Just the sisterhood that we enjoyed prior to broadcasting was really inspiring. And I think some of us who've been around for a while know that we would not have had this probably just 15, 20 years ago. So I am definitely inspired by the women that are on this panel. Deborah Johnson, I've been a fan of hers for a long time. Every conference, I somehow find her and make sure. Being from Southern California, Stephanie Wiggins is somebody else that I've looked to your leadership at LA Metro, and then now moving on to Metrolink. Lauren Skyver of Sunline Transit, who's really been a pioneer in the alternative fuels, really going out there and really paving the road for those of us that are trying to test the waters. I think most of us know the strong leadership of Carolyn Flowers. So definitely these are the women that when you have a tough day, you think about. And one of my fellow co-workers and definitely strong ally is Elva Carrasco of Latinos in Transit, and seeing her leading that organization and leading men and women of color really inspiring. So I do think of individuals, and definitely that is not an all-inclusive list, but these are individuals that when you have a bad day, you want to know that they're out there, you can reach out to them, you can make a phone call, or you can read about the amazing work being done at their respective organizations. I think as we kind of today really exemplified leadership for women that are looking to us, we want them to have people that they can think about, reach out to, and feel that somebody looks like them in the leadership role. So that's really what's inspired me. And in celebration of Women's Month, I really do think it's important that we have people that are close to us in leadership positions. So hopefully I'm doing that today. And I thank you all for joining me today and in the sisterhood that we've enjoyed kind of through this panel. So I thank you very, very much.
Thank you, AJ, for joining us. And thanks to everyone with the sisterhood that continues to grow and really make a difference. So thank you for what you're doing and your leadership. Appreciate your comments. Next, Stephanie.
Thank you, Carmen. I love all of these answers. They're fantastic.
I know.
And I'm gonna improvise because all of my answers have been taken. From I loved India's, the crew, our operators, our dispatchers. Today is the 1-year anniversary of the global pandemic. And when you really get to know your employees and appreciate them even more, as we all have the responsibility of continuing to provide essential service to essential workers. So thank you for that, India. And Inez hit it out of the park, all of the ones who have come before us, absolutely. Deborah, the ones who are present, yes. Deborah, not only is she inspirational, but she doesn't talk about it, she walks it. And I know it from her sisterhood and being a leader even together at LA Metro. So she definitely walks the walk. And AJ has just always been an inspiration from when I first joined Metro, and then she kept getting promoted and doing other things. But so I will just add, I have to give a shout out to my own mother, Inez, and Deborah talked to their mother. My mother was incredibly encouraging, independent, hard work, have a better life than she did with the 10th grade education. So I always strive to try to make her proud. I would also say my aspirational motivator is Oprah. You talk about someone who, broke the glass ceiling in a male-dominated profession and does it with grace and temerity, tenacity. Is always an inspiration. And then lately, I've been influenced a lot by Brene Brown. She talks about choosing courage over comfort. And as I think about my leadership journey, that is something that has served me well. And I think we have to be fearless. And all of these women on this panel, I know for sure are fearless. And then I'll just close with a shout out quite humbly to COMTO, because I had been in transportation for quite some time and did not see people who looked like me who were in leadership positions. And when COMTO started the Women Who Move the Nation, I wasn't tuned into it when they first started it, but when I got tuned in, India was getting awarded. I was like, oh, there's one. So I just appreciate COMTO for actually removing the shadows and making sure we know that while there may not be someone right in our organization, there are people out there doing their thing.
Great. Thank you, Stephanie, for sharing that. There are just so many positive things that we're sharing here today that I really think that those that are listening today, there are so many opportunities. We just need to really step up to the plate and really speak out and say, I am ready. And guess who will help you? The ladies in this room are going to help you do that if you just give them a call. So I think that's a unique thing that we do. And I love COMTO for really making this available to all of us and including other organizations that are really making a difference, so we learn from each other. We have individuals that have really played a key role in our lives, our families, our friends, those that really are side by side. So thank you for those comments. And so guess what, Stephanie? you get to answer this next question first. And so I'll share the question with everyone. As women are advancing in the transportation industry, what can be done to ensure that women continue to thrive in leadership positions? So we'll start with you, Stephanie.
Okay. Well, I am ecstatic about women stepping into more leadership roles. I'm an Exhibit A, so I'm glad that we're able to do that. And all of us here, and as AJ was saying, the mere fact that we have our own panel today. I know 5 years ago, this panel could not have been convened. Many of us are the first to hold the position. So it's a good sign, but we know gender equity issues still exist and more needs to be done. I would say two things that I talk about and experience, particularly as a CEO, is I really think that as an industry, we have to look at our executive hiring practices. Boards should go through training on gender equity issues. I think the more women that are on boards, the better opportunity women have to get the C-spot opportunity as CEO. Particularly, I think gender equity training for boards can also give them insight on some of the challenges women have in transportation if certain career pathways like operations or maintenance or construction are typically male dominated. Those can also, in an unintended way, be a barrier to considering them for the top spot. So we really want to make sure that people are aware of those challenges. And to that point, the second point I would close with is, as CEOs, we have an opportunity to empower our HR departments as well as our chiefs and hiring managers to take a closer look at those job descriptions, starting with the entry-level ones, to make sure there aren't unintended gender biases in what's being required, so that everyone has a fair opportunity for that career pathway and we don't have unintended barriers. Uh-oh, Carmen, you're still on mute.
Carmen, you're on mute.
It tells me. It tells me.
I
The
thought I lost
system
my
tells
audio
me.
again. That was scary for a minute. I was like, oh no, I lost the audio again. Good.
No. It reminds me, big front, unmute. But no, there are, I mean, HR really plays a key role, but also, we need to get the word out when those opportunities are available. And I sometimes, when I spent 12 years at DART, Dallas Area Rapid Transit, and it was, they did a really good job, but just to try to get information out to the right, resources to encourage candidates to come and apply. That, and that we have a diverse group, obviously. So it is challenging, but we have to continue to work through that whole process and work with and collaborate with other organizations. Such, we've had that conversation with Latinos in Transit as well, to try to, really encourage people to come and get them ready. I think that's the key thing. You have to make sure that if we're looking at a C-suite, make sure that they're ready to take that role on. Let's get them ready. Thank you, Stephanie. I could probably talk some more, but I'm not the panelist, I'm the moderator. Thank you so much for those remarks. Deborah, you're next.
Yes, so thank you so much, Carmen, for our opportunity to address this. And I share the sentiments of my sister, Stephanie, in reference to gender equity and training. It goes back to the old adage, if a tree falls in the forest and you don't hear it, did it really fall? So I think if anything, what the problem that we're faced in is not as if people intentionally want to discriminate against women being in the roles that we're in, but they're not accustomed to seeing us in this role. And so when you don't see it, you can't believe it, and then you won't be able to achieve it. So with us sitting in this forum today with nearly 160 people being convened, they are seeing these strong, powerful women, and I'd be remiss to even say strong, powerful women of color. Because in this agency in which I am leading, it's been in existence since 1969, and I am the first woman. And while that may be exciting, it's still detrimentally sad to me, because recognizing as we forge ahead, we have to bring others along. So it's incumbent upon me, it's incumbent upon all of us, and I already know this group is all about it. We have to ensure that we are bringing others along. And when we look at our vice president, my illustrious soror of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, I could not go without saying that. But as she said, basically she may be the first, but she may not be the last. We stand on the shoulders of those that come before us. So what we have to do is look at those job descriptions, as Stephanie indicated. Why does one need to lift 50 pounds? I mean, really and truly, are we carrying tires? Are we moving a bag of rocks? So the point of the matter is, let's ensure that we are investing in our young women to let them know that, hey, we can do it. And more specifically, getting back to the first question at hand, talking about women that inspire us, and we talked about our operators, and we talk about those that have been part of our family. Let's not be fooled. We know that the primary transit dependent customers in this country are single mothers of color. So we have to ensure we take them from the bus stop into the boardroom, but that's incumbent upon us to leverage all these platforms and talk about it. And I encourage my brothers in the transit space to ensure that they are doing their due part. So it's a collective effort, training, us being in these forums, and us speaking our truth and ensuring that we're involved and we're volunteering and mentoring so people can basically model the behavior we'd like to see. So thank you.
Great shout out to Deborah. Great job, Deborah. Thank you for sharing those words. AJ, you're next.
Thank you. Well, definitely support both Stephanie and Deborah and everything they said. What I do want to add to that is that I think the pandemic has really showed us that women can be teachers, mothers, cooks, clean the house, do everything. And I will tell you, in my organization, the amazing women that work here have been able to balance it out. We've actually have improved our performance, streamlined our processes, all while women have been working from home many of the time. So I think for too long, we told ourselves that we couldn't figure it out. And the pandemic has really changed that. We've had to figure it out. And I think it's really an example of how the work environment can be adapted to really allow women to be mothers, to be active in their community, to be successful and not be pigeonholed that if you're doing this, you can't do that. We've been able to do it. This panel here exemplifies that. And I think we need to move past this pandemic and really look at what else we haven't looked at. I know in our workforce, our frontline employees, we've been accommodating to our men and women in our frontline who've had to take additional time off to take care of their children. So I do think that as women, it's really on us to start modeling what a woman-friendly environment looks like. And also, as Deborah said, to look at our brothers in the industry and ask them to also do the same. Because unless we start moving forward on that, I think we're going to try to do things the way we've always done. And that really excludes women from advancing to the higher position. So just want to kind of reference that, given that we have a lot of lessons learned from this pandemic, that we need to welcome back what I heard was 3 million women that left the workplace. So we've got to make space for them.
Wow. Wow.
Thank you.
You know, those numbers just really resonate with all of us. You know, it is a changing world, and we have adapted. We really have adapted. And I think that, you know, multitasking is just one of those things, right, India? So I will thank you, AJ, for those comments. Let's hear from Inez.
Wow, so much has already been said, so I'll just add on to it because I agree with my sisters here. But, you know, one thing you've kind of heard a reoccurring theme is we've been talking about a sisterhood. And, you know, one thing is we need to support one another. We need to have that support system that helps build you up, because, you know, there are times when we second guess, we have self-doubt, we lack that confidence. And when you're in the C-suite kind of, or in a leadership role, you're very careful about who you speak to and who you open up to about that. So having individuals who you can count upon to, empower you and encourage you is very important. I think training is definitely an issue for folks looking in leadership positions. So if it doesn't exist, you need to raise your hand and you need to be a part of fixing the problem and creating programs that will help make the change. Regular seminars that are dealing with specific issues that women need to hear about and how to overcome a lot of those challenges. Creating mentorship programs. How many mentorship programs are out there that are specifically for women? I had to go out and seek my own mentor. You know, there wasn't this database of folks that were just sitting there waiting for me to raise my hand and say, hey, you know, I think AJ was hitting on a good point about, you know, looking at the lines of communication with technology that's out there nowadays. We really need to look at how we use our workforces, you know, differently. Women are just super women. We have capes on every single day. They may be invisible, but they are there. Trust me. You know, we are running agencies, we're running our homes, and I walk around with my tennis shoes on and they are on underneath my desk right now. Trust, I am moving. And lastly, I would say, to help us thrive, we need to make sure that we have an environment where women can raise their voice. We need to carve out a space where women's voices are not just heard, but they're amplified. You know, advancement of opportunities for women are opened up and that lead strictly to that executive role. You know, we've talked about COMTO and AFTA, but are there specific programs? And I think Stephanie touched on it, you know, now that we're cheering on, and I commend COMTO for that, you know, but because there aren't very many organizations that are looking to do that. So with all of these steps, it will show us and help businesses to help rewrite that narrative that traditionally is known to hold women back.
Well said, Inez. Thank you so much for sharing. Whew. Boy, are we just like, we need to raise our voice. Yes, I love that. All right, thank you, Inez. And India?
Yes, so I absolutely agree with everything that's been said. I think Inez hit on a lot of points. I was just kind of writing notes as everybody was speaking. I really think the mentorship is important, and really kind of letting your voice be heard is absolutely imperative. I know that a lot of us share those kind of firsts, right? I know Deborah mentioned being the first since 1969. I'm also the first in Cleveland. You know, there's a lot of these firsts as far as women, but it's a bittersweet moment. And I definitely agree with that, because along with being a first, whether it's being a first in college, a first, you know, time mother, a first time CEO, whatever your first is, there's also the acknowledgement that it hasn't happened. And so there's going to be this kind of educational moment that really exists there. And I do think it's important to lead the charge in that. So when, you know, we talk about educating your boards and educating your staff and just your operational team, you have to be able to kind of embody what you want to see. I think it's really important to change the status quo, right? So I'm kind of writing my notes, and I'm writing holding a standard of excellence beyond the mediocre. We've got to think about how we're raising the next generation of women to be able to shatter those invisible ceilings, and really think about what's acceptable for the position. And looking just beyond gender, it's absolutely important. I think that women hold a bit of an emotional intelligence that sometimes is lacking in our industry. And I think it's really important that we celebrate that. We've got to be able to encourage those young women who are coming into their own, and those that are in it, right? Those of us that are in it, to be able to really learn from those trailblazers, but also learn how to adapt the messaging for your particular time in the sun. So there's a lot of different ways to be able to do that, whether it's encouraging folks to be able to talk about the emotional intelligence that goes into hiring the right person for the job, the wherewithal to know whether or not that degree will subsequently come behind 15 years of work or 10 years of work, and being able to know when to invest in an employee versus when to expect them to come already ready to go. I think a lot of women, we do have that balance, right? So Carmen, I caught that kind of wink and nod to the multitasking. I can proudly say that I've got two pandemic babies, so to speak, right, that are coming through. And it's an unusual thing to see a CEO walking around 8-9 months pregnant, kind of operating the same way as a man would in this position, and not really know what to do with that. And I think we've got to be able to own that duality of our personalities, that duality of who we are as women, and really be able to offer that kind of knowledge, whether it be institutional knowledge or just life experience, to the job, and hold people also equally accountable of being able to share, what they have to bring to the table, and let people know that we're human, right? We all are human. We've got two sides of our lives, but merging those two together in order to really have a full balance at work of success when it comes to your goals and your metrics and your KPIs, and also to look at your diversity hires, your extracurricular activities, your mentorships, your internships, and really making them mean something, I think is important. Awards, I always say, are fantastic. But my question is, what have we done as a community? What have we actually accomplished? And have we actually talked to each other instead of just sending an email? So I would definitely agree with all the ladies that have been speaking today, and would just encourage everybody listening in to continue to shatter those glass ceilings, but also serve as a example for what you want to see in your team.
Yes, well said, India. There really isn't a book that we can follow, and especially in today's environment, there is no how to do this. But I think this is our opportunity for each of you and for others on the call, that we begin to lay out those steps that we need to take to achieve our goals. And, you've got to get yourself ready as well. And that mentorship is really critically important. I know when I was at DART, I had the privilege of, I asked one of our executive leaders if, what do I need to do to move up in the agency? And she said, well, just find your, executive mentor. And I said, okay. I said, well, I guess I'm just going to go to the CEO. And she just looked at me, but I did. And 6 months later, I'm assistant vice president. So, sometimes you just got to speak up. All right. I gave you a little bit of time, India, but not too much, because you're going to lead this next question. What are some unique challenges women of color face in the transportation industry?
I would say that there's a lot of them that exist. There's a lot of challenges, period, right, for women. I think someone mentioned, I saw in the chat, I can't help it, I kind of look at the same time, of mentioning, being able to lift things and aptitude testing versus knowing the tools, and just being able to look at the general hiring practices and being able to come through the ranks. But I'd say for women of color, public transportation is a disproportionate game when it comes to the amount of folks that are represented in communities of color that actually drive, clean, and maintain the vehicles, versus those individuals that are like the 1, 2, 3, 5, 6 of us that are on the panel today. I think that it's very much indicative of how we have kind of come through the ranks in life and come through educationally. I think it was Stephanie that mentioned her mother with the 10th grade education, what she's been able to accomplish since then. And then also just being able to learn how important that degree is, or not, to what you have to do to kind of have your voice be heard. So I would say a challenge for women of color in particular in transit is really making people understand that we are more than what we look like. It's an important part of us, but it's not all encompassing. I always say that it's interesting when I come to a new city, or even when I'm in the city I'm in, and assume that I am the bus operator or the bus driver when I say that I work for whatever public transportation system. And I'm very honored by that, because again, I feel that those are the folks you see every day, right? That's who you're going to see. You may not see me, but you're going to see that person operating the number, whatever, going down the street or a particular rail line. But the unfortunate part of that is that it's an immediate pigeonhole as far as what the expectation of our capabilities are and what our perceived limitations may be, based on the fact that we have a little darker hue to our skin tone, or we actually have a little bit of a twang to the way that we speak, or the way that we move. I think that that is something that we have to work to overcome on a daily basis, which is very much ingrained in the way that we make our decisions, the way that we interact with our team. So I think that's something that's unique to the woman of color who's in transit. It's not a challenge that's insurmountable, but it is something that needs to be addressed head on. And what I usually do, just for a matter of a little bit of entertainment, is I wait for that person to see me on the news. And usually I get a little bit of a different report when I see them next time. And, you know, and we just talk about it. And I say, hey, you know, let's think about that next time. You know, don't put a limitation on the person that you don't know. It's not that it's an insult either way, but that you have already made up your mind on what you believe I can do, instead of allowing me to show you what I can do. And then from there on, I do believe that that person has a little bit of a different mindset. When they do see that Black or brown girl walking down the street, that person may be the one who actually is making a decision on your essential services, not just operating the door and saying, hello, come on in.
Yes, you're absolutely right, India. Very well said. All right, Inez, you're next.
Wow. I don't know how to follow that. I know she just dropped a word on us right then, you know. But I think, you know, I would just add on, because she's just hitting it on point. You know, women of color often experience, you know, what we call the double bind of, you know, race and gender marginalization as we're trying to navigate the transportation industry. You know, we can look and see when we go to our conferences and just see how we are truly in the lower end of the numbers compared to our male counterpart CEOs. You know, we're faced with the biases and the microaggressions, you know, that happen in the workplace and through the hiring processes. You know, it creates that sense of isolation that affects, you know, our chances of success. You know, and to be able to, you know, to cast that down, you know, as we've been talking, we need to ensure that we're creating a working environment and a culture that not only supports women, but fosters a culture that's championing us. So we can take away the stereotyping perspectives that, you know, women of color are looked upon, and we can celebrate the leadership skills and the competencies and the assertiveness. You know, men can exert these attributes and they're touted, they applaud them. But women show assertiveness or aggressiveness, or we can be task-oriented leaders, and we get different labels. So we often sit at the table in silence because we don't want to be the angry woman sitting at the table. So then it creates a lack of self-advocacy. We fail to use our own voice, and so we tend not to be heard, you know. So those are my biggest things that I would have to say. You know, and my last thing is, we fail to stand in our own success. You know, we always shrink away from it, and we don't want to see that we want to be boastful and stuff. But I'm here to tell you, you need to stand on your accomplishments. You need to not be the obstacle in your own way. I don't know how many times I talked myself out of applying for a job and saying, oh, I wasn't ready. And so that is another challenge, because as we've said before, if you don't have a sisterhood, if you don't have mentors, people who are helping to empower and encourage you, you know, you are going to be left behind, because you can be your own challenge at the end of the day.
Oh, I just want to stand up. I'm sorry. This is just like, I'm just, oh, goodness gracious. You all are just amazing. You're just amazing. Thank you so much, Inez, for that. HA, you're next.
And I'll keep mine brief, but I do want to say, I think we've touched on, both India and Inez, about there's still a lot of stereotypes about women leaders. And I think women of color leaders, we're still trying to not appear angry or too emotional. We're still trying to fit in. And I think sometimes that inhibits our ability to bring our true self. So I think by building this sisterhood, by having more women, it needs to be acceptable for us to be ourselves, to bring our true selves to the workplace, and for us not to be labeled. Because, you know, men can get angry in the workplace and it's like, oh man, he had a good point. Oh, he's a strong leader. But we do that and we're too emotional. You know, our hormones are referenced and all that. So I think we're always trying to think about how every word we say, the tone that we use, how it's being perceived. So I do think those stereotypes have not gone away. But I think as more women continue to enter the industry, we can not just tolerate, but embrace our differences and want people to bring their true self, their culture, by really, you know, I love the conversation about diversity, equity, inclusion, as long as we're all the same. And it's like, no, that means we're all different and we're still included. It's not about us trying, as women of color, trying to fit in. It's about being accepted for who we are and what experience we bring to the table. So I will say those are the challenges that I think we're still trying to overcome. And, you know, we'll continue to tackle that. But as more women see us, they will feel more comfortable in their skin being themselves.
Wow. Great comments, AJ. It's so true that, you know, I think that when we look at just starting with this group, you know, what are some of those best practices and how really can we make a difference and move forward too, so that we, you know, begin to, and you're so right, there are just so many stereotypes when it comes to our leadership. And, you know, we're relationship builders. That's what we do. And you all are doing it so well. So thank you for what you're doing. Deborah, I believe you're next.
Yes, thank you, Carmen. And I gotta say, y'all were preaching, okay? And so as I sit here nodding my head and looking at the chat and everybody's like, amen to that, I needed to hear it. What I am reflecting on now is that you may see me sitting here, the people that are watching this virtually, and look at me as being the strong and courageous individual. We all have self-doubt and we all have voices in our head. What I deal with on a constant basis is standing in my truth, being the true person that I'm intended to be. And let's not be absorbed what everybody else thinks, because all that is their perceptions, opinions, and attitudes about us. What matters most to me is the character that I possess, because that defines who Deborah Johnson is. And recognizing what AJ just touched upon is we are diverse individuals. Each and every one of us has a unique story. And not everybody knows that story. They look at the cover of the book and they want to make an assumption about what those pages detail, what each chapter is. But basically, if we can step into our truth and showcase what it is that we know, holistically, all of the industries, not just transportation, public transport, we could be better collectively as a people, as a community, as a country. And so when we talk about the challenges, one thing that has resonated with me is the assumption. We talk about microaggressions, we talk about the stereotypical behavior, and those assumptions that are made. How did you get in that seat? And oftentimes that's not asked about a man. I can recall, and I know Stephanie knows what I'm talking about, we're in an industry and somebody's like, oh, you need to know how to work the window. You need to feather the brakes. I applaud people that took that path. But as I share with people, have you written a report to Congress? Have you done a strategic plan? So let's embrace what we bring to the table, because there's interdependencies that make us the best that we can truly be. And we possess competencies that can add to the leadership aspect of the transportation agencies that we're overseeing. So let's step outside of ourselves and look at each other as human beings and recognize our collective efforts is a microcosm that makes America, America. And as we deal with these issues that are so prevalent today, let's embrace who we are and talk about JEDI being justice, equity, diversity, inclusion, and recognize we don't know what it is that we don't know. But what I'll leave you with this is that all of us just need to be kind. Just need to be kind and recognize we don't know what people are dealing with. So as people, and as I think about the first leadership role I had, I saw my reflection in a window. And it was when I was working at a transit agency outside of California. And I was questioning myself, and I saw the reflection, and I thought to myself, I'm sitting here with these clowns. If they can do it, I know I can. So believe it and own it and be you, boo. That's what I'll leave with you.
All right. Woo-hoo. Shout it out, Deborah. Love it. Okay, Stephanie, your last.
Lord have mercy.
But-
Amen. Hallelujah. I don't even know what to say after all
Goodness
this.
gracious. Woo.
The question, I don't even remember the question. It was about our
Unique challenges,
right?
unique challenges.
Well, you've heard from the masters. I would just say that, you know, I've experienced all of those challenges. What would I offer for the audience? And yes, in terms of the solutions, implicit bias training is a must. I recognize when I think about my career path, I would say as a Black woman, I can talk about as a Black woman, I felt like I had to make everyone feel comfortable because my skin spoke before I did in a room. And people are not used to a Black woman being in charge. I think they're comfortable with us being maybe supervisors in an operation setting, but they're not comfortable seeing us as the head of planning. They're not comfortable seeing us as the CEO, the chief operations officer. And it is a different type of pressure that environment can put on you as a Black woman, because you're having to deal with these microaggressions and assumptions that you're going to be the angry Black woman, that you're going to be the stereotype. And it can be very, very tiring, very tiring. So I offer, though, as Deborah said, the opportunity to have a sisterhood and dig deep within yourself to know that you deserve to be there and that your voice matters. And for me, I just was fortunate or unfortunate, I guess it's a sad story, but I was fortunate to realize early on that I was going to be underestimated in any room that I walked into, whether it's because I was a Black and then I was a woman. So I might as well just say what I got to say. It served me well. I'll stop there.
All right, ladies, oh my goodness, this has just been absolutely phenomenal to hear all of your just things that we've experienced in our lives. You know, it's a challenge every day. Yeah, it is. But guess what? We make those challenges, as I said, they're not challenges anymore. We just need to make them positive, and it's a can-do, you know, effort in moving ahead. We're sitting at the table, so we might as well do something about it. Okay, y'all? So I got to use my Texas twang in there. But thank you all so very much. It has been a pleasure just listening to your true stories. These are not stories that are made up. These are true stories, true experiences that you encountered in your career, and you're continuing to move up. And I just see all of the comments from all of the folks on today, and they're just like, rah, rah, say it, preach, all those things. So thank you so much. And I'm going to turn the program over to Goturi, but it's indeed been a pleasure to have hosted this event here today. And I think everybody's going to take a lot of nuggets back with them. Thank you again. Goturi, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Sure. Thank you, Carmen, and thank you to our panelists. So we do have a few more minutes for some Q&A. We have a few questions in the Q&A box. So our first question to the panelists is, tomorrow our president will sign the American Rescue Plan Act that includes $30.5 billion for transit. How does this influx of funding change your perspective and the future trajectory of your respective organizations as it relates to your service offerings and funding to maintain your staffing levels?
That's a long one. Goturi, do we want to just have one or two people, or whoever raises their hand to answer that question?
Yeah, sure. Maybe two, and then we can move on because I want to get as many questions in as possible.
Okay, Stephanie, I saw you raise your hand.
I was just gonna say, thank you very much. No furloughs, no permanent reductions in service. Thank you.
There you go.
Does anyone else?
India, did you want to respond?
Sure, I'll just weigh in for a second. I think that it's encouraging. I think that it sets a good base for us to be able to really allow ourselves to think outside of the box. I will say that I don't think we should be comfortable as an agency or as an industry to say, hey, we're getting this kind of bone, right, thrown at us. It's not to be taken for granted, where I think we have a unique opportunity to really prove ourselves against the private industry. I think we have to prove ourselves within the transportation industry to say, okay, we're not your traditional mom and pop transit agency. We're breaking barriers innovation wise. So I would use that opportunity to really allocate those dollars into programs that will help us push forward so that we're not just kind of holding on throughout a pandemic and go back to the status quo after it's over.
Great. So our next question is, what do you say to women who are intimidated by the operations and maintenance aspects of leading a public transit agency?
Deborah?
Yes, I'll jump in and take that. Basically, for all intents and purposes, with any agency, any organization, any business, you need leadership, right? Do you have to know every nook and cranny of a business in order to shepherd it? Basically, if you have the trust of your employees and you lead and you motivate them, they are going to give you their all. And so if you create that relationship therein, you'll be able to do it. Do you have to know every aspect about planning? As I said before, there's interdependencies and it's like a big puzzle piece. You as an individual can't be every single piece in that puzzle. You have to be willing to step back, create that environment where people want to do their ultimate best and thrive. And if you have that, then you'll be good, because people will come to you and share with you what you need to know to be successful in delivering the core business of any transportation people. Because, hey, we're people moving people. And if you don't have your people, you can't be successful, because none of us can do it alone. So lean into it and embrace it and leverage your leadership competencies and you'll be all right.
Right.
Does anyone else want to handle that question?
I'll jump in there as well. To just feed off of what Deborah's saying, if you're feeling uncomfortable, you haven't leaned into it. You haven't gone out and taken the steps to gain that knowledge. Intimidation comes from a lack of knowledge or understanding. So guess what? Going out into the garage, put on some coveralls and stand with the men and the women who are out there turning wrenches and ask questions. Because guess what? That's what I did. I learned I ain't turning no wrenches because I'm not trying to get no grievance, but I will stand there and help understand about the different components and what it takes to do an A inspection and a B inspection and all of those different inspections. And then you're able to speak from it. I'm still not an authority on it, but I know enough to be dangerous. And I still go out there even to this day as we're bringing on electric bus technology, and I'm standing on the floor and I'm asking the men and women who are out there on our floor doing the job, so I can still, I'm giving them respect to the role that they're doing every single day. Okay. And then they're understanding that I am concerned and I care about what they're doing. And it also helps me to understand where we may have some gaps in our training program to help bring skill set up. But we open up these opportunities for everybody. And sometimes you got to put in the time on your own time to be able to get that comfort level in and move on up.
Great, thank you. So our next question is, when managing a workforce that looks like me and struggles like me with real world issues, how do you balance the role of nurturer versus supervisor/manager?
I can answer that. What I think it's, we've been talking about here today has been people moving people. I mean, I think nurture talks about understanding. And I think we also have to differentiate of when to nurture and when to really encourage paths. What we don't want to do is somebody who's afraid and we want to keep them there. What we're doing today is we're really inspiring people to grow, to challenge themselves, to lean into it, And sometimes that could be seen as not nurturing, but it is the kindest thing we can do, and is to really encourage people to grow, to be accountable to themselves, to the community, to their customers, to their coworkers. So I think there's a good balance between nurturing and inspiring. And I will tell you, people will thank you for having inspired them to take on a greater challenge them to be, whether they're in the front line, whether they're somewhere in mid-management administration, or really able to be take on a different challenge in a different organization. I think all of us are where we're at today because we probably left an organization we loved, but it was time for us to grow, to challenge ourselves. So what I want to say is nurturing doesn't just mean accepting kind of the baseline. It's really empowering people to move beyond what is in front of them at that moment.
All right. Did anyone else want to handle that question, or we can?
I just want to add on something, and I applaud AJ because that is spot on. One thing that we need to be cognizant of is that when we come to work, we are coming to a place where we are immersing ourselves. We don't take off our personal lives when we enter the door, right? So basically, if we have the ability for our teams to see us as a person, they will recognize that we are in the same element they are in. And I'll give you an example. When there was the insurrection at the Capitol, I had an all hands meeting about layoffs. And I started that meeting because I recognized there was this big elephant in the room. And me as a person of color, in light of what's been going on in this country, has plagued me. But I'm supposed to come in, sit in forums such as this, and exude leadership competencies and be that true leader. But I'm seeing people that look like me adversely impacted in what we call today's America. And so the point of the matter is, if I'm trying to lead an organization, I just can't cut off what is plaguing me when I look at individuals that are reliant upon getting places, but don't feel safe and secure in doing so because they may be targeted just because the hue of their skin. So the point of the matter that I'm trying to express is that we as leaders are people, and people are what makes up our environment. And so we need to show some element of vulnerability so individuals have a recognition of what it is, what we possess, in order to lead these dynamic organizations and be good stewards of taxpayer dollars. But ultimately, we have this responsibility, I believe, to cultivate and encourage and motivate our teams. Not only is it professionally, but some of those lessons that we can impart will be for the betterment of them personally. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have time for one more question. This is a pretty broad question, but recognizing the pandemic has disrupted our industry, what is your vision for the future of public transportation, and/or how do you envision the future of the industry? Anyone want to tackle that?
Stephanie.
Leave it to Shalonda to give us a tough question at the end. That's Baldwin. Yes, I'm calling you out. I really think, and I think India said it in response to the earlier question about what does the American Rescue Plan mean for us. But I really think the pandemic is truly more than a crisis. It's a disruption. It gives us an opportunity to really revisit what is our value proposition and how are we really meeting the needs of the communities under which we operate. I am devastated by the tragedy that it has brought. And I am at the same time incredibly hopeful about the opportunity to really make transformational change, not only in how we are represented as a people, what it means for transportation. I'm looking at an opportunity for us to really make headway in providing universal basic mobility to everyone and provide it in an equitable way where pre-pandemic there were some folks talking about it, but it was not really resonating. And I'm very hopeful about the opportunities for transformative or lasting change. It is, as leaders in the industry at this time, it's a great time for truly innovation, truly to revisit all these sacred cows and know that we have to do things differently if we want to be sustainable and really make a difference in the public health crisis that it was already there, it just was in the shadows. And we in transportation have a role to really advance health equity for the communities that we operate in, and that's what I'll be focused on.
So real quick, if I could jump in, I think Stephanie, you hit it on the nose. I don't know what people's religious or spiritual, affiliations are that are on the call, but I do think that it's not a coincidence that we have all of this social unrest and all of this pandemic happening simultaneously, right? For whatever reason, I think it's almost a benefit that is happening at the same time, so we can actually talk about the diversity and inclusion sort of conversations with a little bit more comfort than we might have before. I also think that the pandemic has caused a lot of collaboration where previously it may have not existed. So folks are actually finding, the S on their chest and the invisible cape that Inez mentioned before, and saying, hey, this is important to me. We need to talk about this. And how dare you not do so in light of what's going on? So I do think that transportation is being forced to do that as well. Whether that's collaboration within your own state and your public transit association, and speaking on the Hill, or actually getting in the ear of legislators to really say, hey, look, this is important, and this isn't just for low-income folks that are Black or brown in our communities. This affects everyone, because we're really relying on those essential workers that come in all shades and all credences and all colors, and we're the ones that are moving them in absence of X, Y, and Z. So I do think that this provides a stage that we have to take advantage of right now. I think if we don't, shame on us as an industry to not be able to see the opportunity to do so. But I feel very fortunate to be at the helm of one of the agencies that are part of the fight. And I think that it's our responsibility to keep moving things forward and to keep fighting for things that we know are going to set the stage for a different kind of innovative transportation industry at large.
So I have one more question, if we can just squeeze this in before we end.
Make sure we end on time because we're really close here.
Okay, well, how can I go about not working too much outside of my job description? I'm in this kind of job for the first time, but I've been asked to do things that are under my degree, which is not what my position is. So maybe we can get one person to quickly answer, if possible.
I'll take that question. And I've always been one, as we talk about acclimating ourselves to our environment, I am an evergreen learner, and I would leverage that opportunity for the betterment of myself. And so basically ensuring that you have this ability to acquire as much knowledge as you can, to the point that Carmen raised when she was at DART. Use that information by expanding your bandwidth for the betterment of your own self-development to go on to something else. I wouldn't look at it as if this is my job description and I've been asked to do other things. There's always that line, other duties as assigned. It's up to you to decide how are you going to leverage those duties assigned for your own professional growth.
Excellent.
And if I can just add one other little tidbit, take it as a compliment. If they are asking you to do other things, they see something in you that is worth cultivating and to give you that life experience to move you on forward. So don't take it as a hardship, take it as applause and run with it. Because that next opportunity, they're watching you and they're seeing that you're that next rock star. You're that rock star, and they're cultivating, they're polishing that rock, and they're turning that piece of coal into a diamond.
Thank you. So Carmen, did you want to help us with wrapping up before we hand it back over to Tara? Did you have any?
No, I think we'll just go ahead and turn it over to Tara. I'm ready.
Okay, all right.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. So many truths told here today. I have 2 pages of notes, and I can't tell you how many things spoke to me. I do want to leave everyone with one truth that was spoken. And I believe it was Inez who said it. Stand on your accomplishments. Boy, if there is anything that we need to do, it is stand on your accomplishments. How many times have we been sitting at the table in silence? I think that AJ mentioned that because we don't want to be angry. We don't want to be emotional. Stand on your accomplishments. Thank you so much. This was a tremendously inspirational panel. I've been getting texts and LinkedIn notes and emails. The chat was blowing up. It was just amazing, amazing, amazing. Thank you so much. And Carmen, yes, and Carmen, thank you so much for moderating. We appreciate you taking time out to help us with just sharing this messaging. I think that everybody had something to take away from today's panel. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Welcome.
Sure. Okay. Before we leave, I just wanted to make you guys aware of some more upcoming COMTO events. On March 25th, we will have our COMTO 50 Historical Perspectives Part 2, where we will gather our COMTO trailblazers and leaders from the past and present to talk about the COMTO turning 50 and their experience with the organization. So it will be moderated. The next event will be moderated by Ms. Carolyn Flowers. It will feature Dr. Beverly Scott, Will Scott, and Jackie Davison. So that's another great event that you'd want to attend. And then on April 14th, our Emerging Leaders presents Work Balance During COVID-19. And then on April 16th, we're going to actually have our Industry Awards virtual ceremony. So those are some exciting events that are coming up this spring. And then also to help us celebrate COMTO's 50th anniversary, we have our 50 for 50 campaign where we're asking you to donate $50 in honor of COMTO turning 50. And with your donation, you will get a COMTO 50 face mask. And if you have any questions or want more information about COMTO, such as our events calendar, the 50 for 50 prayer campaign, or to learn more about membership, visit us at comptonational.org. And with that, I thank everyone, thank our moderator, thank our panelists, thank Tara, thank everyone, all of you in the audience, everyone who's kept the chat, as she said, blowing up. You know, we have a lot of webinars, but this is like the most activity I've seen in our chat box. So thank you all and have a great afternoon.